I must protest. I am not a merry man. Hello, I'm Phil. Welcome to my channel where I talk about all the geeky pop culture, things that I enjoy. I, last year, did weekly reviews of Star Trek Discovery, and with Picard coming up in January, I'm going to be doing weekly reviews of that as well. But in the meantime, I am trying to work my way back through Star Trek The Next Generation. I was very young when it was first on TV, so I don't even know if I've seen all of it. I know I've seen most of it, but I don't know if I missed episodes. So I am going back through TNG. Those that I do remember is very fuzzy, a lot of it. So I have been working my way back through over the last several years of all Star Trek in sort of chronological order. Started with Enterprise, then did the original series, then did the animated series, then did the TOS movies. Now I'm on to Star Trek TNG. I'm up to season 4. And I thought, I've been doing this for a couple of years, I should review some while I'm doing it. I'm not going to review every episode. I'm going to review just the occasional one, because sometimes I watch like 3 episodes in a day, and I don't have the time to record a review for all of them, in amongst all the other videos that I make. So, I'm going to record the occasional one. This one is about the episode Cupid from season 4.
Data!
This is a weird episode, isn't it? It's very strange. I mean, a lot of the Q episodes are strange, because he has these magical powers and can do all these weird things with them. But this one is a particularly strange Q one, I think, in my opinion. Now, don't get me wrong. Generally, Q episodes are some of the delights of Star Trek TNG. I love the interaction between Picard and Q. It's always a delight, even in the worst Q episodes. Just their interaction is always a delight. And that doesn't change here. It's very good. I'll get on to that in a minute. This episode starts off with Picard preparing for a archaeology conference, which is happening on the Enterprise. He's giving the keynote speech, and he's very nervous about it. And Vash turns up. Vash was the love interest of his that he met on Riser. Was that season 3? It might have been season 3. And, you know, she's on the ship, attending the conference. There's obviously their old flirtation rears its ugly head again. Then Q turns up and feels that he owes Picard a debt for the last time that they were that they interacted with each other. Picard helped Q out in the end, and Q doesn't like the fact that he has this debt hanging over his head. So he says to Picard, "You ask me for anything, I'll provide it. I'll feel like my debt has been repaid and I can sleep easy," or whatever. But Picard is having none of that. He doesn't want anything to do with Q. He hates Q. He doesn't want Q's gifts. But Q is very persistent, keeps on asking him, says, "Oh, I'll take you back in time to this place where the thing you're talking about in this archaeology conference, you can see them in real life." Because he can't go down to the planet now to investigate the ruins, because the indigenous population do not like that. They do not like visitors coming down to their ruins. They banned it. So Q offers lots of different things that he could do, and Picard refuses them all. So in the end, once Vash is on board, Q decides that he's going to play Cupid and, put these two together in a fictional environment and see what happens. That is how we end up with the Robin Hood scenario that that Picard, Vash, and the crew end up with. With Picard as Robin Hood, Vash as Maid Marian being captured and about to be executed, and all of that stuff. And that's where it really gets weird. This episode is very much a tale of two halves. The first half is this archaeology conference thing, these mystic ruins that they're not mystic, these old ruins, these ancient ruins that they're going to be talking about, and Vash wants to go down there illegally, and Picard tries to persuade her not to. There's that plot line going on, and then suddenly it's this Robin Hood thing, and it's very, very strange. It does have some good moments, though. The good things I liked. Picard's interactions with Q, I mentioned earlier. Whatever episode it is, how good the rest of the episode is, I always love their relationship and how they act amongst one another. They're always very... Picard hates Q. Q loves winding Picard up. It's just brilliant. And there's the one moment in this episode where Q just appears in bed next to Picard, and yeah, that's good. But I think Q was a little bit wasted in this. Those initial interactions between the two in their offices while he's pestering him, all very good stuff. But then a bit later on, it kind of feels like it's not so much a Q episode, which is very strange for an episode with Q in and that is named after Q. He sort of feels like he's just there to transport them into the plot, which is this Robin Hood Maid Marian scenario. So it kind of feels like he's a bit wasted. So there's good and bad with Q's involvement in this episode. Now it's a feature of 90s television that there's not that much overarching story arcs within TV of this era. And so each episode doesn't really affect the next to much degree. Now, there are exceptions, obviously. You know, Best of Both Worlds had an ongoing effect on Picard, but even that only kind of reared its head in Borg-based... in the very next episode, where he dealt with the sort of post-traumatic stress of it all, and he went back to his vineyard. And then it only again reared its head when there was a Borg episode, mostly. But because of that, I mean, that's just how 90s television was made, and I guess they wanted it to be watched in any order. They didn't think people retained the knowledge and the information, or watched in that way that ongoing plot lines would work. I disagree, which is very much why I like Deep Space Nine as my favourite TV show, because that's the point where they started to do more of that. But in this episode, you do get some returning elements, which is quite nice. You get Vash, and it references back to his relationship with her on Risa. So, you know, they did things like that throughout TNG. They would have an episode where they brought back a character from another one, and then in that episode, the things from that earlier episode were relevant. But it would have been nice to see that continue for, you know, either side of that. You know, next episode, have him, you know, thinking about Vash and, you know, that kind of thing. Just seeing it tick over. But it was nice to see Vash return. I quite like her playful interactions with Picard. And of course you've got Q, and there was references back to the last Q episode. So you got those type of things. And then you've got the sort of more development of Picard's interest in archaeology, which of course had been established when he went to Risa as well. So there's some nice stuff for Picard in this episode in terms of his personal development, I suppose. Developing that background, that world building to his personality with the archaeology stuff. And also one moment I did like was when Vash was being shown around the Enterprise. She's shown by Riker, and she's shown onto the bridge. There is the Picard comes in, Vash is sitting in the captain's chair, and I like the way that Picard in that particular scene is very much he's very much formal. Picard is a person that likes to keep his personal life and his professional life very separate. And this awkwardness and this contrast between how Vash is speaking to him and how he feels he needs to speak to her on the bridge, his workplace, in front of all of his colleagues, in front of all of his subordinates. He's very stiff, he's very, you know, formal, and you know, doesn't embrace her, doesn't hold her hand and take her off the bridge, just sort of, you know, very much like please come this way, and it's all very formal. And that is very much Picard's character. He, like I said, he likes to keep his work and his professional and his private life separate. They should not intermingle in his mind, and to keep that. And that's why he also, and that goes to friendships as well. By the end of the series, he's very good friends with, you know, Riker and stuff like that. But he still won't. It's not till that very last episode of the series that he joins in the officers' poker games and things like that, because he's very much a person that, like I said, likes to keep his personal and professional separate. He feels it might compromise him, and it takes him to the end of the series to get to that point. So at this point in series 4, I like that. That was a good bit of character stuff for Picard. Then we've got the Robin Hood stuff, which is just weird. It's weird. It's a bizarre, kooky episode, and it suddenly turns into, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. There are some good points. That line from Worf,
I protest. I am not a merry man.
Is amazing. That's definitely my highlight of the episode, that line from Worf. So there's that. But there's, it's very much a love story between Picard and Vash, which is fine. But just the setting feels, it's weird. I can't even really justify why. It's just very weird. This has been mentioned. I've seen this mentioned by people that aren't even talking specifically about this episode. They just use this as an example of something, of a wider point they're making about Star Trek in the in this era. There's a fight scene where all of the guys have swords and are fighting, and the girls, the women, sort of cower and then smash a pot on someone's head by. And that's the extent of their fighting. These are, trained Starfleet officers, and they don't think to pick up a sword or anything, or they don't engage in the fighting. It's very much they're playing these, they're in the role of these characters from this world. But even within that, some of them are the merry men. They're not playing the female characters. Some of them are the merry men from that. So it just doesn't make any sense why they wouldn't join, grab a sword or join in the fighting a bit more. It's a little bit strange. Also in this, the threat of the execution of Maid Marian / Vash, that feels like it should be more high stakes than it does feel. It doesn't come across the way the characters are reacting to it, because in this isn't like a holodeck program. If Vash gets executed, she's dead. Doesn't matter that it's in this Maid Marian fantasy Robin Hood world, she is dead. So why are they treating it so glibly? And again, it's partly the 90s and the way TV was made, but it doesn't ring true, the threat level. And so you don't get as invested in the suspense of it all. It's kind of feels a bit like, it's just play acting. So that's a bit of a shame too. And the last negative I would say is at the very end, when Vash decides to go off with Q. He offers her the chance to go anywhere in the universe, and her, as a adventuring archaeologist, can't turn up her nose at that offer. And absolutely right. What I don't like about that scene is Picard's reaction to it, in the sense that he doesn't have much of one. He seems a bit shocked, but there's not much of an emotional reaction there. Bear in mind, he might want to put on a bit of a face for Q, I suppose. He's not in front of any of the rest of his crew, so maybe I don't think the whole professional versus personal thing really comes into play much here, but he might want to put a bit of a face on it for Q. But still, I think they could have done something a bit more with that. He doesn't seem, someone he certainly fancied, certainly had a attraction to, maybe loved, I don't know, went off with someone who he hates. There was no feeling of jealousy there, or at least not as much as there should have been. So, yeah, that doesn't quite ring true. And I can't remember. I think Vash does come back again in a future episode. So maybe I'll review that one when it comes to it and see how he reacts then. But here it didn't quite ring true. QPid is a very weird episode, as I said. But look, a lot of the criticisms I have of it were kind of endemic of TV in the 90s generally. So it would never be high up on my list of ones to watch again, I don't think. And there were a lot of criticisms I had of it, but, there were some good bits as well. And overall, yeah, my verdict to this is just, it's a bit weird. But not in the kind of weird I really like David Lynch type weird, just weird. Anyway, that's my review of QPid. What did you think? Let me know in the comments below. Have you seen this episode? What are your opinions on it? Do you think it's weird? Do you like it? Do you like the Robin Hood bit? Which bit do you prefer? Do you prefer the Robin Hood section of it, or do you prefer the bit set on the ship when there's the archaeology conference going on and Q's just there trying to, what would have made this episode better for you? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and all that jazz for more pop culture content from me, more Star Trek stuff, and Picard reviews coming in January. Thank you for watching. I will see you soon.